Hi, today we're going to talk about advertising. Advertising is the most visible part of the marketing that we do, but it's kind of strange because we don't actually control it as marketers. We make strategy, we give it to an advertising agency. The agency is the one charged with bringing it to life and making the commercials. And so today we're going to talk about, how do you manage an agency? How do you work with an agency? What are kind of some of the red flags you need to look out for? And just understand the business because, an advertising agency is a big deal. They're a vital part of your marketing mix. If you don't have a good agency, you're not going to have a good brand and a good sales. They can make or break you, but you have to understand that they have their own agenda. They are a business and they make a lot of money. They make a lot of your money. So, from a profit perspective, the advertising agency usually takes about 20% of your overall marketing budget. So think about that. If you're a brand like a McDonald's, a Coca-Cola, a General Motors, that's spending, $500 million or more a year, the agency is sucking up about $100 million of that. So there's a reason why these agencies have top floors of all the big buildings on Madison Avenue. They are making a lot of money, and so we need to understand that. How they make their money? Well, it comes in 4 different buckets. The first is a retainer. When you hire an agency, they become your agency of record is what it's called. And for that right, you pay them a monthly retainer. And that retainer can vary. If you're a brand down in Salt Lake City with, maybe a furniture store like an R.C. Willey, your agency might charge $1,000, $2,000 a month for their retainer. But if you're a Coca-Cola, a GM, a Budweiser, your monthly retainer fee might be $100,000. So it's negotiable and it's all over the board, kind of depending upon how big your brand is. But that's the first part. The second part is where it gets expensive, and that's billable hours. So every time anyone in the agency works on your business, they start the clock, just like a lawyer would, and you get billable hours. And each person in the agency, depending upon their level and their expertise, charges a different rate. So, for example, if you've got kind of a lower level copywriter developing the copy for one of your print ads, you might be getting charged out at like $100 an hour for that copywriter. But if it's a senior partner of the agency working on your brand, you might be getting charged out at $10,000 an hour. So every month you get a bill that says, here's how many people have worked on your brand of the month, and here's their billable hours, and here's what you owe us. And that can rack up. There was one project that I was working on when I was at Coke where I wasn't paying really close attention to the agency, and they racked up $250,000 in billable hours in just 1 month. So had to cut that off in a hurry. But that's the second part of their billing. The third is they do a markup on the creative. So when they present the creative to you and you say, okay, yep, let's go ahead and make that one, then they go out and figure out how much is this thing going to cost. And so they have to hire a director, and they have to hire a lighting person and a makeup person and actors and film editors. And there's making a commercial is very similar to making a movie. A truck pulls up, all this equipment comes out of it, and you've got dozens of people working on it. And so a typical commercial, a typical 30-second commercial for a big brand costs about $250,000 for a 30-second spot. And then, if it gets more complicated, if it's a highly creative spot or it has a lot of different stuff moving around, it can run up to $1 million and plus really quick. So again, they take a 15% markup on whatever the cost of it is to make the commercial. So that's the second or the third part of their bill. And then the fourth part is when you run your advertising. They have a person inside of their agency that's called a media planner. And the media planner is the one who decides where are you going to place the ads to maximize your exposure among the target audience. And so they might buy some digital ads over here, and they'll put you on TV over there, and they'll buy some radio and some print and some billboards, and they take a markup on that as well. And so by the time you roll it all together, it turns out to be about 20% in overall for whatever your budget might be. So the way that an advertising agency is structured is similar to a basketball team, a professional basketball team, where you've got a team owner, and you've got the front office, and you've got the players. So in using that analogy, in an ad agency, you've got the owners who are the named partners of the agency. You've got creatives who are like the players. The creatives are the ones that are tasked with making the ads and coming up with the ideas. So they're the Michael Jordans of the ad industry. And then you've got account executives, and the account executives are kind of like the front office. They're charged with running the business on a day-to-day basis, interacting with the client, making sure everything gets done on time. And so the creatives become the really important part of this, because the creatives are the ones who come up with the ideas. So we have to understand what motivates creatives. And the first and foremost thing is they are motivated to make wildly creative commercials that they can put on their personal reel, because that's the currency of the business. A creative that makes really creative stuff on your dime, by the way, and gets awards, they can leverage that for more compensation at a different agency. It's kind of like baseball players. A baseball player can play for 30 different major league teams. It doesn't really matter which one, it's which one's going to pay them the most, right? And so agency creatives are kind of like that as well. They're free agents that move around quite fluidly, but a good creative in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago can command salaries in excess of $1 million a year. So, it's a highly compensated business, but it's a hard job. I mean, think about it. Every single day, you got to come up with new-to-the-world ideas, and most of them are going to get shot down. So you got to have some thick skin. So creatives are the most important part of this whole process. They love peer recognition. They love having award ceremonies and handing out trophies. They hand out trophies like Halloween candy. And then you have to understand also what motivates the management side. And the management side is motivated by the cash. So, they're looking at how am I going to maximize our return on the money that's going to come in from this account. If you want to get great work, there's a few keys. Number one, have a brand positioning statement. Many brands hire agencies and say, okay, go make stuff. And they don't have a strategy to give them. And so it's just throwing stuff against the wall and hoping something sticks. You can't do that. You have to give them your brand positioning so that they can work off of that, number one. Two, you got to give them freedom. And it's going to take time, because an average advertising campaign takes about 6 to 8 months from the time you give them the assignment to the time it's ready to go into the marketplace or go on the air. You've got to be an encourager, you've got to be a cheerleader, you've got to give them access to information if they want it. Some creatives love to have the research and the data that they can look through. Some creatives like to go out on focus groups. I've taken many a creative out on a focus group, and we've sat in the back room and listened to consumers talk about the brand. But you kind of got to play that by ear, see what the agency's creatives want to do. And then you got to give them research, you got to give them consumer insights so that they understand how you got to the strategy that you got to. Because sometimes it's not obvious to them, so you need to explain to them how you got to where you got so that they have a deep understanding of why you're positioning the brand in this way. There are blunders that you can make from the brand side that can sideswipe you. Number one, trying to rush the process. You can't rush the process. You got to give it time. Again, 6 to 8 months typically. If you say I need something in 30 days, you're just going to get garbage. Trying to influence too much with your own direction or your own suggestions. You know, you're paying these people. These people are highly compensated. You're paying them for their creative genius, so leverage it. Let them do it. Don't try to put your own ideas in the way. Stay out of the way. And finally, try not to interfere with the process. Just let the process take care of itself. Usually you just try to leave the creatives alone. Let them go do their thing. When they're ready to present, they'll let you know. And they'll come in and present their stuff. So now I want to transition to what I call the 6 deadly sins of advertising. And the origin of this happened quite by mistake, actually. I was on an airplane going over to the International Olympic Committee headquarters when I was getting ready to start thinking about advertising for Coke in the Olympics. And so in the basement of the IOC headquarters, they've got a library of all of the commercials that have ever been made by any Olympic sponsor for television. And so that's probably a good place to start doing some research. So I went over there and I watched 40 hours of commercials, and it was mind-numbing. You know, I saw the same commercial time and time and time again, especially wrapped around summer games, where an athlete is running down the track, and the voiceover says something about, you got to go for the gold with McDonald's golden fries, go for the gold with Texaco, go for the gold with whatever. And they had that. I probably saw that ad 100 times, both from U.S. and from international, and it was crazy because you'd see this runner going down the track for Samsung, and you didn't have any idea what they were saying except for it. They'd say Samsung Gold, and off they go. And so, as I was flying over, I was reading an article about the 7 deadly sins. And as I'm watching these ads, some of that started to resonate. And, I thought, gee, it seems like some of these things are things that you can just shoot yourself in the foot and, make your ads not too effective. And if you can just avoid shooting yourself in the foot, maybe you can give yourself a chance. So I spoke with our advertising manager when I got back, and I mentioned this to him. And he said, it's kind of interesting. Maybe we should do some research on it. So they did. And they found that, yes, there are definitely 6 deadly sins when it comes to advertising. The first is pride, just slapping your logo everywhere. I remember in my interview at Coke, the Chief Marketing Officer, Sergio Zeman, said, when we were in Barcelona, you couldn't turn your head 20 degrees any direction without seeing Coca-Cola. And I interjected and I said, well, my perspective was from the guy laying on a couch in Los Angeles watching the Olympics like the 99.9% of the world. And I didn't see any of that. The TV cameras weren't out there, so that didn't really matter. You were talking to the small crowd that didn't matter. So just slapping your logo everywhere. It reminds me of another story when I had a lunch with a senior executive at Coke one day, and he said, well, you know what our advertising strategy is, right? And I said, well, I'd like to hear it. And he said, well, it's quite simple. If it moves, sponsor it, and if it stands still, paint a Coke logo on it. And that's kind of what they were doing. It was a little frightening. But anyway, pride, slapping your logo everywhere, not a good way to advertise. Second, gluttony. Wrapping your brand in irrelevant, pretty pictures. And you see this on car ads a lot, where they've got this wet mountain road that the car is zooming down, and with the voiceover. But frankly, we use our cars to take our kids to school, right, or to go to work. And so you're putting it in an irrelevant situation. Third is envy, where we mimic or we look like our competition's ads. I'm going to tell you a story here about that in just a second. Greed, overselling, overpromising. You know, that's not ever going to work. Sloth, acting trendy when your product isn't. And wrath, angry, accusatory, intimidating kind of advertising. We see a lot of that during election campaign cycles. Now you'll notice that the one that's missing is lust. And the reason it's missing is because lust, sex, really does sell well. And so it's a great advertising tool in certain situations, so we throw that one out, but the other 6 still exist. And they're, you know, just avoiding those is a good way to not shoot yourself in the foot and to give yourself a chance of success. So when you meet with the agency, it's typically called an ad review meeting. And the agency will come in and they will present their advertising to you, and you'll have a discussion about it. And so my first ad review meeting was the worst experience of my professional career. I'd been at P&G for maybe a month, and I come back from lunch and the brand manager says, hey, you know, the agency's in to present some stuff, why don't you pop in and have a look? Okay, great. So I walk into the room, all the brand people are sitting on one side of the table, all the agency people on the other, and the agency executive stands up and says, you know, we've been working on this campaign now for 8 months. We really think we've cracked the code on it. It's a beautiful campaign, and you know, this ad we really think is going to resonate with people. And you know, we'd like to show you the finished version now. And if you're okay with that, we've already scheduled it to run tonight on primetime. So without further ado, they hit the button, and this commercial comes on with a young lady about, you know, late 20s, early 30s, with shoulder-length brown hair, wearing a plaid shirt and blue jeans, walking through an orange grove with a little blonde-haired daughter that you know, looked to be about maybe 10 years old. They're holding hands and walking through the orange grove, and the mom is talking about the goodness of Citrus Hill orange juice and how she just can't pick a better juice for her and her family. And it ends with her taking the little daughter up and putting her on the back end of an old rusted out pickup truck out in the middle of the orange grove with orange crates behind her. And she just says, you know, you can't pick a better juice for you and your family than Citrus Hill. So I see the commercial, and to my horror, the division manager leans over and he says, so Eric, you haven't seen any of this, you haven't been involved with any of this process, what do you think? And no one had told me the rules of engagement for one of these ad review meetings. And the rule of engagement is that junior level people can only respond by saying if it's on or off strategy. That's it. You can't make any creative comments whatsoever. And I violated the sin. I said, unfortunately for me, the night before I had watched some primetime TV, and I'd seen a commercial for Tropicana that had a young woman, late 20s, early 30s, brown shoulder-length hair, plaid shirt, and blue jeans, walking through an orange grove, reaching up, picking an orange off of a tree, saying you just can't pick a better juice or have just picked freshness than with Tropicana, and it ends with her standing in front of a rusted out pickup truck with orange crates behind her. And I said, gosh, it's a great ad, but it looks an awful lot like the Tropicana ad that I saw last night. The room goes dead silent. You can see the redness in the faces of the creatives just starting to boil. And after about 6 or 7 seconds of silence, they explode. It looks nothing like the Tropicana ad. We've seen the Tropicana ad. How dare it? I mean, it just imploded. And then a young lady who was sitting next to me, that was also a rookie, she pipes up and she says, she defends me and she says, no, I saw that same commercial last night and they are very similar. And the place just belted down. And so I got taken out of the room, and my brand manager is just shaking his head. He's going, oh man, I'm sorry, I stepped in it. I should have told you, you can't say that. You insulted the creative's creativity. I said, well, what? All I said was, you know, it looked like the Tropicana commercial. They said, we know, you can't say that. All you can say is it on or off strategy? Well, it was on strategy, but it was just, it mimicked the Tropicana ad, which is one of the 6 deadly sins. we didn't know that at the time. So my relationship with that agency never was healed. I had to be taken off the business, moved to a different brand that had a different agency because those creatives hated me. And they probably still hate me to this day. I saw them at a trade show in Chicago about 5 years later. I'm walking down an aisle, and it's one of those unfortunate situations where you see somebody you don't want to talk to, but there's no place to hide. There's just nothing but space between the two of you. And if looks could kill, they would have both had Uzis out shooting me. So, they hold a grudge. So, anyways, this is how a typical review meeting should work. The advertising agency account manager will stand up and review the strategy. They'll talk about how they've been really working on it, and boy, they've got some really good stuff to show you today. And then they'll turn it over to the creatives, and the creatives will present usually 5 or 6 concepts, ideas of the advertising that they think that we should make. And the way they do that is through what's called a storyboard, where they basically take a big piece of cardboard, white cardboard, and they draw pictures on it to kind of move you through what the scenes would look like as the commercial progresses. And they have a stack of those, and then they kind of act out the commercial in real time in front of you. So they say, they go to here, and then they go to there, and they just keep flipping the things on the floor so you can kind of see how the commercial would progress. Yeah, it's not very high tech. It's really low tech, and you've got to make decisions on those things based on that, a storyboard and a story being told by the creatives. And sometimes you're making, like I said, $250,000 to $2 million decisions based on that. And so it's hard. And unfortunately, you don't get a lot of practice doing it. The agency might only come in a couple times a year. And so, judging creative is really difficult, and evaluating creative. And so we're going to go through that practice here in just a second. So the agency comes in, the creatives present, the marketing people kind of give their feedback from a strategic standpoint. They don't make creative comments, except for the most senior person in the room. They can say whether or not they like one or not. Everybody else has to just talk about strategy. And then you discuss next steps. So I'm going to give you an experience today of being a brand group, seeing new creative that is being presented by the agency. And so the brand that you are going to be representing, you are now the brand team of Mountain Dew. And the agency is coming in this afternoon to present new creative to you. And you've got to make the decision on whether or not you're going to green light those ads or not. And so we're going to go through this process, which is exactly the same process that every ad that you ever see goes through. So, before we get to evaluating the creative, the first thing we need to do is take a look at Mountain Dew's historical reel, they call them. And in a historical reel, it's basically just looking at here's where the brand's been over the years. And so every brand has a historical reel where you can sit down and you can look and see how the brand has been advertised, how it's been positioned, how it might have changed over time. So you can kind of see its evolution. So you're not repeating things, you need to understand what history is first. So we're going to take a moment here and look at the historical reel of Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew was invented by a bottler out in Tennessee. It wasn't done by one of the big bottling companies. It was just a little tiny independent bottler out in Tennessee, invented Mountain Dew, started selling it locally. And in 1966, Pepsi comes in and buys it. And so they decided to take it nationwide. And so this is the first commercial that was ever made for Mountain Dew in 1966.
Mountain Dew! Oh, beautiful Sal was a stone-hearted gal, refusing to bill or to coo. But Clem was right smart, he appealed to her heart with that gal getting good old Mountain Dew. Yahoo! Mountain Dew!
Mountain Dew will tickle your innards, 'cause there's a bang in every bottle.
At the county turkey shoot, 'cause Luke warn't worth a hoot. He was hopeless till he finally took the cue.
Yahoo! Mountain Dew!
Now he shoots off the cup, gets more than enough after nipping at that good old Mountain Dew.
Sure as shooting, there's a bang in every bottle of our delicious soft drink, Mountain Dew. It'll tickle your innards.
Not quite what you expected, huh? Yeah, they were selling Mountain Dew as basically a soft drink moonshine back in 1966. So then they changed to a campaign that was called That Barefoot Feelin'. And here's that.
That barefoot feeling on account of Mountain Dew. One little taste made me kick off both of my shoes. It's a happy feeling too, 'cause drinking Mountain Dew makes me giggle, makes me wriggle, makes me want to stick out my toes and wiggle. I'd rather be barefoot than any other way I know. Mountain Dew has got the tingle you can taste down to your toes. For the energy to let you swing, make Mountain Dew your thing. Get the barefoot feeling, drinking Mountain Dew.
Here's a taste that'll just knock your socks off. Mountain Dew gives you that happy, summertime, barefoot feeling all year round.
Get the barefoot feeling, drink a little bit of Mountain Dew. Get the barefoot feeling, drinking Mountain Dew.
Notice how untargeted that is. Mountain Dew's for anybody and everybody. It's for businessmen, it's for cops on motorcycles, it's for kids playing football, it's for kids riding bikes. Anybody can enjoy Mountain Dew. You know, there was no targeting whatsoever. And so, you know, that was a little bit of a problem. And so as we progress into the early 80s, now all the brands are starting to do brand positioning. They're starting to, that's kind of the thing that's ramping up. And so every soft drink brand in their research discovers that the age of coming for soft drinks is between about the ages of 16 and 25. Between that age bracket, you decide on which brands you're going to like, and those brands will stay with you for the rest of your life. And so everybody turned all of their guns towards the 16 to 25 age group. And so this was Mountain Dew's first attempt at that.
Give me a mountain and nothing to do. Give me the sunshine, give me a dew. Give me something simple and true. All I need is sunshine and smooth, refreshing Mountain Dew, yeah. Give me a river, give me a dew. Give me my good friends, give me a dew. Give me the sunshine, give me a dew.
As we progress into the late 80s, early 90s, Mountain Dew starts looking at extreme sports. And they go, you know, there's a really good connection there between the energy that we provide with the caffeine in our drink and extreme sports. And so they thought, you know, let's wrap our arms around that before somebody else does. And so this was their first attempt to introduce extreme sports into the brand.
Blasé. Passé. Okay. Cliche. Obvious.
Tedious.
Frivolous. What a wuss. Speechless.
So you've never done nothing till you do the full tilt taste of Diet Dew.
Obsessed.
Possessed.
Impressed.
No contest.
Notice the Dew Dudes. The Dew Dudes were introduced in this commercial, and they lived for almost 20 years through the rest of Mountain Dew's campaigns. And they did something really interesting with the Dew Dudes. Instead of having just, you know, 4 guys that always showed up, it was always 4 guys, but it was always 4 different guys so that they could keep paying them minimum wage. And, you know, there's a challenge sometimes in advertising, because if you create a spokesperson, you know, every time you use them again, the more embedded they get in your brand, the higher the cost is going to be. And so, and then you're running the risk that they might do something stupid, i.e. Jared from Subway. So not having a spokesperson is sometimes the safest route to go. And even when you don't think you have a spokesperson, sometimes you can run into trouble. When I was doing a campaign for a cake that we were developing when I was on Invention Team, we had created a heart cake for the Fantastic Party Cake line. And we hired a couple of actors to be young lovers that were enjoying a dinner, Googling each other's eyes with this heart cake on the table. And, the photography was great. We put it on the front of the box, and about 2 weeks later, we get in the mail a videotape. And it was just a letter that said, "You need to see this." And the young lady that we had hired to be on our cover, on our box, had made a adult video. So, we had to quickly pull those off and, get a new person on the box. So, people are fallible, and, tying yourself in with someone as a spokesperson can backfire on you. So you got to really vet people well. The brand has now grown very well. And, Mountain Dew, it started off kind of on the bottom of the rung, and it's now grown by the mid-1990s to be one of the top 3 brands in the soft drink category, behind only Coke and Pepsi. So Pepsi decides, let's put it in the Super Bowl. And so they make this Super Bowl spot featuring an old crooner. There was a Las Vegas legend named Mel Torme. Have a look.
They get no kick being thrown from a plane. 1,000-foot fall doesn't thrill them at all. So tell me, why should it be true that they get a kick out of do 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 do? All right, now.
So that spot didn't play very well. It was a weird juxtaposition between a Las Vegas crooner of the olden days and the Dudes, and it didn't play well. And so that got pulled very quickly. And, as we move into the mid-90s, the brand's growth is stalling out. When you get so big, it gets harder to grow. And so the brand group decides, well, maybe we've made we've kind of tapped out guys as our target audience. Maybe we should go after dudettes. And so they create a campaign that's targeted at young women. And so here's that.
Little girls get bigger every day. Little girls, thank heaven for them all, no matter where, no matter who. Little boys do.
Think I'm in love.
Yeah, I bet that some of you young women don't like that very much. Usually when I ask a poll in class, I get nothing but thumbs down. Yeah, so that one didn't play very well either. So they've now had 2 misfires in a row with the Mel Torme ad and the Dudettes. And so the brand is scrambling a little bit. They're feeling some pressure. And, if you're an action brand oriented about excitement and action, and you have to have a win, you hire Jackie Chan to be in your next commercial.
I'm sorry. Hey!
See the dude.
Be the dude. Whoa.
Nothing's more intense than slamming a dude.
Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, so the Jackie Chan spot led them down a path for a few years of using TV and movie action heroes. So they made a spot with Steven Seagal. They made a spot with Chuck Norris. Here's the Chuck Norris spot.
You're messing with the wrong guy.
We're up to 1 million hits. Sweet. Who is it?
Chuck Norris.
Yeah, right.
So the last commercial we're going to look at here on the historical reel is the Super Bowl spot from 1999. And so here's that, and then we'll regroup.
Put her in a good spot, okay?
Now we are going to have an ad review meeting, and this is exactly how it happens for every ad that you've ever seen on television. They go through this same process. So the way this would work is the agency is going to bring in, with their creatives, 5 new ideas for commercials. And we as a brand group, you and I, are going to watch their storyboards, and then we're going to have to evaluate whether or not those are on strategy or off strategy, and whether or not we're going to greenlight them with some money. So, there's a lot riding on the line here. So, there's a high pressure. You don't get to practice it a lot because the agency only comes in maybe a couple times a year. So, getting to know how to do this is tough. So before we start today, before the agency comes in, let's review our strategy. So the Mountain Dew brand strategy is this. The target audience is 18-year-old males. The benefit is for those that embrace excitement, outdoor sports, adventure, and fun. Mountain Dew is the great tasting carbonated soft drink that exhilarates like no other. The reason why, that's because Mountain Dew is energizing, thirst quenching, and has a one-of-a-kind citrus flavor. So its product benefits are energizing, quenching, and great taste. Its emotional benefits are exhilaration and excitement, and its personality is irreverent, daring, and fun. All right, so that's the strategy we have to frame everything within. And as we evaluate the creative, again, our role is only to evaluate it from a strategic standpoint. We cannot say whether we like it or not. Whether we like the creative, that doesn't matter. Nobody cares, because we're only to judge it on strategy. All right? So let's take a look at the first storyboard.
So we open up inside the war room, inside the Pentagon, where every head of the military is represented, as well as the head of the FBI, the CIA, the NSB, anyone you can imagine. It's a very serious situation, as one of the guys, the leader, says, let me get this straight. This wacko has control of a United States military satellite and is threatening the very existence of this planet? Another guy says, I'm afraid so. He says, suggestions? Send in the Rangers? Everyone in the room, nah. The SEALs? Nah. Finally, the guy stands up at the end of the table and says, gentlemen, desperate times call for desperate measures. Plan D? Plan D. The whole room says, whoa. We then cut to a snowy ridge as two helicopters rise above it. A dude is on each of the skids with a snowboard in hand. The helicopters fly over, and the dudes jump off the helicopters onto the snow with their snowboards. They begin to snowboard down the mountain. We then cut to an ominous scene. The villain back to camera with the satellite aiming at the planet. As time ticks down, we then cut back to see our dudes flying toward a ski chalet. They all crash through the huge picture window. We then cut to the other side of the chalet, waiting for them to come out. We wait, and we wait, and we wait. Finally, we cut inside and see the dudes all relaxed, music blasting, snow bunnies all around. They're drinking back dew and having a great time. We see various shots of them drinking, having a good time, laughing it up. One of the dudes then elbows a can, mistakenly knocking some of the dew over and onto the floor. They react in horror as they knocked over some of the precious liquid. We then see a small drop of dew travel from the floorboards into the bedrock. It travels down and down and down. Finally, we see it appear through the ceiling of our villain. He looks up, somehow fearing this small drop of dew. Then, just in the nick of time, the dew drop shorts out the doomsday machine, revealing just 1 second left. We cut back to the Pentagon war room. Everyone's celebrating, cheering, screaming, yeah, they did it again, they did it again. We then cut back to the dudes, just finishing their dew. All are completely quenched as they let out a big ah. One of them quizzically looks at the other and says, hey, weren't we supposed to be doing something? We then cut to the title, Do the Do. Then at the end, we cut to our villain, Christopher Walken, who looks at the camera and just says, I hate those guys.
Okay, so let's review the strategy again, and then we've got to decide on strategy or off strategy. So, target audience, 18-year-old males. For those that embrace excitement, outdoor adventure sports, adventures, and fun, Mountain Dew is the great tasting carbonated soft drink that exhilarates like no other. The reason why, that's because Mountain Dew is energizing, thirst quenching, and has a one-of-a-kind citrus flavor. Okay, so you need to vote. Just in your head, on strategy or off strategy. All right, now let's talk about it. So, was it exhilarating? Was it exciting? Up to a point, yes. You know, until they flew off the helicopter and crashed through the window, it was absolutely dead on strategy. But what happened when they got inside the chalet? They chilled, laid back, music blasted, hanging out with the snow bunnies. That's not the brand. They took a left turn and went south. And so it fell off strategy at that point. So yes, it was on strategy up until they went through the window, and then it went off strategy. So we have to turn that one down. Now, the order in which the agency presents their work gives you a pretty good idea of how they think about it. The first one is always going to be a throwaway. It's going to be one that they created, they're not in love with, but they want to get your creative juices flowing. But knowing that you're probably going to reject number one, number two is always going to be the safest one of the bunch. It's the one that they think is dead on strategy. It's not even going to be a question as to whether or not we make it. The ones in the middle can be either way, and the ones down towards the end, again, you're going to want to hold your wallet because they're going to be the ones that are wildly creative and very expensive. So, let's take a look now at number two, which is probably going to be a very safe bet.
We open in Africa, the hot sun blazing down. Off in the horizon, we see a small cloud of dust traveling very fast. We cut inside to see the beautiful grace of a cheetah, traveling about 80 miles an hour. Suddenly, the cheetah looks over its shoulder. turns ahead and continues to run. We then cut wide to see a second dust trail gaining momentum and gaining on the cheetah. We then cut in to see a dude on his BMX bike pedaling for all he's worth. The dude is gaining momentum and gaining distance on the cheetah. He finally catches the cheetah and they tumble to the ground. He looks at the cheetah, opens its mouth, and sticks his arm deep down. He's searching around and finally he finds what he's looking for. He pulls out a dew, but it's empty. Disappointed, he holds the cheetah firmly but lovingly and says, "Bad cheetah, bad." And the cheetah runs away refreshed. We then cut to his three other buddies on a bluff looking down at the scene. And one of them just shakes his head and just says, "See, that's why I'm not a cat person." The three then take a nice long drink of dew, followed by a big quenching ah. And we cut to the title, Do the Dew.
Okay, let's evaluate cheetah. On strategy, off strategy. It's outdoor adventure, excitement, fun, exhilarating. It's checking every box, right? So on strategy. Now, I'm going to give you a second layer of criteria because you could make a really boring commercial that would check all the boxes from strategy. So the second layer is once it clears the hurdle of being on strategy, the second hurdle it needs to clear is whether or not it is considered to be world class. Now, world class advertising has three elements. Number one, the product is the hero or the object of desire. Number two, the commercial is made in a way that is relevant yet unexpected. You know, it's a surprise. And number three, it touches an emotion. Somehow it touches an emotion. That doesn't mean it's going to make you belly laugh. It doesn't mean it's going to make you cry. It just means that it's going to get you engaged in some way and it's going to have you feeling something. So let's judge cheetah by that criteria. Is the product the hero or the object of desire? Absolutely. This guy's chasing down a cheetah to try to get back his Mountain Dew. Is it relevant yet unexpected? Yeah, I didn't expect to see a guy chasing a cheetah on a bike. So, yep, it checked that box. And was it exciting? Yeah, it was exciting. You know, the guy's chasing down a cheetah. So, and it touched an emotion. It made me get excited. So, check, check, check. And that commercial got made. So we'll see it here. We'll look at the final here in a few minutes. All right, let's take a look at the next concept.
We begin inside a labor and delivery room where, in a very serious and dramatic fashion, we see a team of doctors and nurses surrounding a woman just about to give birth. The doctor comes up to the expectant mother and asks, "Amy, are you ready to push?" She nods feverishly yes. Suddenly, through the door comes a young dude carrying a dew can. The doctor, perplexed, looks at him and says, "You, out!" The kid looking at the doctor proudly says, "But I'm the father!" Suddenly, a panic look comes over the doctor's face. He begins to yell, "Code green! Repeat, code green!" Everyone in the room backs up to the perimeter, leaving the woman all alone. The doctor looks at the nurse and says, "Mitt." She places a baseball glove on his hand. The mother gives one final push. We then cut to two nurses. Like spectators in a crowd, they follow the action. Their eyes follow the arc of the flying baby. We then cut to the proud father. He also is watching. We then cut to the doctor, who in true Major League fashion goes back to the wall. He then catches a beautiful brand new baby boy who giggles at camera. The title comes on and just says, "Dudes, they're just born that way." We cut to the proud father who takes a nice long drink of dew, followed by a big quenching ah. And he looks and says, "That's my boy." Do the dew.
This is interesting. Let's vote. Vote in your head. On strategy or off strategy. Okay, let's dissect it now. So, we have a target audience in our strategy of 18-year-old males. Is this on target for that ad? No, it's not. I mean, it's a really cute ad. It's a really cute ad. But this is where it gets hard because you have to hold your feet to the fire of the strategy. And if it doesn't meet the strategy, you have to throw it away. That'd be a really cute commercial. People would love it. But I'm not going to drag my brand into the teen pregnancy debate. You know, that's not what we're about. We're about strategy and holding our feet to the fire. So we had to say no. All right, let's take a look at the next one.
I see a little silhouette of a kind.
Mountain Dew, time to do the slam dunk go. Citrus taste and quenching, very, very exciting.
Fantastico, 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 Figaro.
Magnifico!
They're just thirsty dudes, anybody knows that.
They're just thirsty dudes out on a thirsty date, sparing their life from this banality.
Easy come, easy go, will he get the dew?
Bismillah. No, he will not get the dew. Get the dew. Bismillah. She will not get the dew. Get the dew. Bismillah. They will not get the dew. Get the dew. Who will get the dew? We will get the dew. Here we go.
Oh, cool. Bohemian Rhapsody. Haven't heard that in a while. Now, let's evaluate it by strategy. Target audience, 18-year-old males. 18-year-old males okay with Bohemian Rhapsody? I think they are. The benefit, it embraces excitement, outdoor adventure, and fun. Yep, I think it checks that box okay. And was there an energizing, thirst-quenching element to it? Yeah, there was. So it seems to check all the strategic boxes. Now let's check it for world class. Was the product the hero or the object of desire? Yes, they were all trying to grab that soda. Was it relevant yet unexpected? You probably didn't expect to hear a Bohemian Rhapsody in that commercial, did you? You didn't expect to see athletes and outdoor enthusiasts trying to grab a can of Mountain Dew that's flying past them. And did it touch an emotion? Yeah, it was kind of exciting. The music made it kind of exciting. So, check, check, check. And that one got made. But as I'm saying, you got to check the wallet, because it's going to cost a lot of money to license Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen, and it's going to cost a lot of money to make that commercial. So, wildly creative, but it's going to cost you. All right, let's take a look at the last one.
These classic film clips will give you an idea of the kind of synchronized movements we'll use when we actually film this commercial. Instead of dancers and swimmers, we'll use a variety of alternative sports athletes, doing their thing and doing the do. So as the music comes up, and again in that style, we would see 50 skateboarders all coming up in unison. We then cut overhead as they travel back down and make a whirling geometric shape. We then see a series of rollerbladers flying right at camera and crisscrossing right before us. We again pan down to see a huge star within a star within a star rotating. 75 mountain bikers then leap off of the edge of this precipice. We then cut to see pairs, hand in hand, traveling down this large 3-story railing on rollerblades. Coming in from opposite directions, we see a series of dew cans flying. Then one after another, a hand comes out and catches each of the dew cans. Then in succession, everyone takes a long drink of dew. We cut to see a huge pyramid of everyone drinking dew with the dew coming out and a huge fountain at the top. Then in unison, everyone gives off a big quenching ah, spelling out "do the do." The huge production number is finished. Everyone breathing heavy after working really hard look over to their directors, the 4 dew dudes. They look somewhat unimpressed and say, take 2. We then cut back to the performers in disbelief.
Showstopper. That's what they called this one. Now, this is a tough call. Is it on strategy? Well, is it targeted at 18-year-old males? Yeah, maybe. Is it embracing outdoor adventure, sports, and fun? Yeah, kind of, but it's indoor. And is it thirst quenching, one-of-a-kind citrus flavor? Yes, that one it has, no question. So, what do you do with this? Well, let's check it for world class. Was the product the hero or the object of desire? Yeah, it was. Was it relevant yet unexpected? Yeah, I didn't expect to see that. And did it touch an emotion? Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe not. So, sometimes when you're looking at a storyboard, you walk away with that feeling and you go, I don't know. But if the agency put it in the 5th spot, you know that's the one they really, really, really want to make. And sometimes, you know, you just have to trust them. You have to just say, okay, you know, you've been doing our advertising for years. You've done some incredible work. I trust you. So, you know, maybe you're seeing something that I'm not. So, you know, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. You know, in the grand scheme of life, spending $2 million on a commercial and having it flop for a brand like Mountain Dew or a Pepsi, it's not going to kill anybody. But, you know, for a small brand, yeah, it would. So you got to make sure you hit it right when you're a small brand. But, you know, for Mountain Dew, if they have a $2 million misfire, it's just a scratch. So they did greenlight it, and we'll take a look at that here again in a minute. So let's take a look now at Cheetah, at Bohemian Rhapsody, and at Showstopper. And look to see if you see any minor changes that occurred between the storyboard and the final output.
Bad Cheetah.
See? That's why I'm not a cat person.
I see a little silhouette of a kind.
Mountain Dew, time to do the slam dunk go. Citrus taste and quenching, very, very exciting me. Fantastico, Fantastico, Magnifico.
They're just thirsty dudes, anybody knows that.
They're just thirsty dudes out on a thirsty date, sparing their life from this banality.
Easy come, easy go, will he get the dew?
Bismillah, no, he will not get the dew. Get the dew. Bismillah, she will not get the dew. Get the dew. Bismillah, they will not get the dew. Get the dew. Who will get the dew? Get the dew. We will get the dew. Here we go.
That was great.
Perfect.
You guys are hot.
Take two.
Okay, so they were pretty much on target. You know, the cheetah had the spots on the side of the cat, and the guys up on the hill were on bikes rather than just standing there. Bohemian Rhapsody was pretty much spot on. I don't think there were any changes in there. And then Showstopper had a couple of changes. The lady at the beginning and the Marilyn Monroe picture in the middle, who knew where that came from. But again, so how did they perform? Well, Cheetah was a Grand Slam hit. It ran for 4 or 5 years. Bohemian Rhapsody, Grand Slam hit. It was their Super Bowl spot, and it ran for several months. Showstopper, didn't quite cut it, and it was off the air after about a month. So, you know, sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't. 2 out of 3, that ain't bad. So that's how that came out. Like I said, evaluating creative is really tough because you don't get a chance to do it very often. But you have to have the discipline to just look at it through the lens of the strategy and not get caught up in the creative elements. You know, I don't like the way that the guy was chasing the cat on the bike. That's not realistic. That's not our call. That's not our call at all. We only focus on, is it on strategy, holding it to the fire of the brand positioning. So, making advertising is kind of like catching lightning in a bottle. It's hard to hit a really good grand slam. And unless you know what you're aiming for, you're never going to get it. But if you can use the platform of A, it's got to be on strategy, and B, it's world class, now at least you got a shot. And if you can avoid the 6 deadly sins, you know, that's another parameter that we can use to help frame our thinking as we move forward with our advertising. So we avoid the 6 deadly sins, we hold it to the feet of the fire of the strategy. If it passes that muster, then we hold it to the feet of world class. And if it can pass that, we're on our way.